Welcome back to another deep dive into our Timeless Egypt series here on Beyond the Known. Today, we're embarking on a truly fascinating intellectual journey, understanding how we managed to unlock the secrets of ancient Egyptian writing. A script that remained silent for over 1,000 years. It's incredible to think that for so long, these magnificent hieroglyphs were just there. Powerful symbols, but completely unreadable.
Absolutely. Just imagine.
So our mission today is to explore the pivotal artifact that allowed us to finally break that silence, and also to delve into the different forms this ancient language actually took.
Right, because it wasn't just one script.
Exactly. And by the end of our time together, you'll hopefully not only grasp why this was such a huge deal, but maybe even pick up a new party trick writing your own name in hieroglyphs.
It truly was an extraordinary feat of, intellectual detective work. Imagine a civilization spanning 3 millennia, leaving behind this immense legacy of written records etched in stone, on temple walls, papyrus scrolls, and then just silence. For over 1,000 years, the voices of these ancient Egyptians were just lost.
It's almost unimaginable, isn't it, that a civilization lasting that long, leaving such visible traces, could become linguistically inaccessible. And it wasn't like a sudden thing either.
No, definitely not.
Towards the end of its long history, Egypt faced, wave after wave of foreign conquests: Assyrians, Libyans, Babylonians, Nubians, and then, crucially, the Greeks, and finally the Romans.
Right. And with each new ruling power came their own language, their culture. Greek became the language of trade and administration, especially under the Ptolemies.
Yeah, and later Latin took over with the Roman Empire. So this gradual shift just sort of pushed the ancient Egyptian language to the sidelines.
It's quite sobering to realize that the last known ancient Egyptian inscription dates all the way back to 425 AD.
Wow.
After that, the ability to read and write, it seems to have just vanished.
Yeah.
Completely. It became, as we say, a dead language. A linguistic time capsule, you could say. For over a millennium, those intricate hieroglyphs held their secrets tight. Think about the sheer mystery of seeing those texts beautiful, clearly important, but totally incomprehensible.
Must have driven people mad with curiosity.
Oh, absolutely. Endless speculation.
And one of the biggest hurdles in even beginning to understand it was this really ingrained idea that hieroglyphs were purely picture writing. You see a drawing of an owl, you think owl.
Seems intuitive, yeah. That was the widely held belief. People looked at those detailed pictures of birds, animals, objects, and just assumed a direct one-to-one meaning. This picture means this thing.
Yeah. Felt logical. But the reality, as we now know, is that ancient Egyptian was fundamentally an alphabetic language, much more like our own system where symbols represent sounds. That basic misunderstanding, that idea of it being only picture writing, actually stalled any real progress for centuries. It's an interesting thought. If it were just pictures, wouldn't you expect people from different cultures to, get some of the meaning?
That's a really good point.
The fact that it wasn't universally readable kind of hints it was working differently phonetically.
Exactly. A purely pictorial system would likely have some level of intuitive accessibility. The fact that understanding it required specific learned knowledge pointed towards a more complex, sound-based system.
Right. And despite not being able to read them, these sacred carvings, as they were often called, they really captured people's imaginations. So much guessing.
Oh, definitely. One fascinating example is the Greek writer Apollo. He lived centuries after the script fell out of use, yet he wrote this whole treatise on what he thought they meant.
Without being able to read them.
Not a single one. It just shows the enduring allure, He was trying to interpret a language he didn't know.
Leading to some interesting conclusions, I bet.
You could say that. Sometimes he'd actually stumble upon a correct association, but for completely the wrong reason.
Yeah.
Like his explanation for the duck hieroglyph.
Okay.
He correctly said it represented a sun. His reasoning, he thought it was because ducks are really protective of their young, a purely visual behavioral link.
Which makes sense if you're stuck on the picture writing idea. But the real reason was different.
Totally different. The duck hieroglyph actually represented the sound sa, and crucially, sa was also the ancient Egyptian word for sun.
Oh.
So the connection was phonetic, based on sound, not pictures or behavior. It really highlights that fundamental gap between the misconception and the reality.
Yeah, it really does. So for over 1,000 years, this amazing linguistic heritage lay dormant. And then came this pivotal moment, a turning point.
That breakthrough happened during Napoleon Bonaparte's Egyptian campaign. Now, most people think of that militarily, and yeah, it wasn't a military success.
Yeah.
But in a remarkable twist, it inadvertently kicked off something huge: the birth of modern Egyptology.
It's amazing how unexpected discoveries pop up, even during conflict. Napoleon, actually showing some serious foresight, brought with him not just soldiers, but about 150 scientists and scholars.
Yeah, a whole scientific corps. Their mission was to study Egypt in unprecedented detail, document everything, nothing like it had ever been tried.
A massive scholarly undertaking.
It really was. And while the military side didn't pan out, the scientific discoveries were invaluable. But the single most significant discovery, the absolute key, was the Rosetta Stone.
The Rosetta Stone. Even the name sounds like unlocking something. How was it found?
It was unearthed in 1799 by Napoleon's soldiers. They were digging fortifications near the town of Rosetta, or Rashid, in the Nile Delta, and the stone was actually found embedded in an old wall.
Just part of a wall, like recycled rubble.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Seems it was reused as building material from an older structure. Thankfully, though, a lieutenant noticed the inscriptions saw both Greek and clearly Egyptian writing.
Wow.
And he had the insight to realize that this mix of languages could be the key to deciphering the hieroglyphs.
What an incredible moment that must have been. Just looking at this chunk of rock and thinking, this could unlock everything. What happened next?
It was quickly sent off to Cairo, where Napoleon scientists started studying it intensely. Now, here's something that often surprises people. The Rosetta Stone actually only has 2 languages on it: Egyptian and Greek.
Only 2. I think a lot of people, maybe myself included, assume 3 languages.
It's a common misconception. 2 languages, but the Egyptian part is written in 3 different scripts. Think of it like having the same message in English, but once in formal print, once in cursive, and maybe once in, like, shorthand.
Okay, that makes sense. Same language, different writing styles.
Yeah.
So what were the 3 scripts on the stone?
First, the most famous one, hieroglyphic. The iconic pictures, the sacred carvings, used mostly by priests for religious texts and for official decrees on temple walls. The fancy formal script.
Sacred and powerful one. Okay.
Second is demotic. That name comes from the Greek demos, meaning the people. This was a more cursive, everyday script, used for practical stuff, letters, accounts, legal documents, maybe even laundry lists, much faster than hieroglyphs.
So like our everyday handwriting. Less formal, more practical. And the third script was Greek.
Exactly. Greek was the language of the rulers at the time. The Ptolemaic dynasty, they were Greek, descended from one of Alexander the Great's generals. And this is where the crucial clue was hidden, right in the last sentence of the Greek part.
Ah, the key. The bit that cracked the code. What did it say?
It stated that the same decree was inscribed in sacred and native and Greek characters. Sacred clearly meant the hieroglyphs, native meant the demotic script the Egyptians used, and Greek characters, well, that was the Greek text.
Wow.
This was direct confirmation. All 3 scripts said the same thing. It provided the parallel text everyone needed for translation.
That must have been absolutely electrifying for the scholars. But you mentioned there were other Egyptian scripts besides these 3 on the stone.
Yes, 2 others are really important. First, there's hieratic. This is another form of hieroglyphic writing, but even more cursive, though still considered sacred, mainly used by priests.
More cursive than hieroglyphs, but not quite demonic.
Exactly. It was faster to write, often using abbreviated symbols like just the head of a bird instead of the whole bird. Think of it as bridging the gap between the formal hieroglyphs and the everyday demotic, a kind of sacred shorthand.
Okay, sacred shorthand. And the final script was Coptic.
That's right. Coptic was the very last script to emerge in Egyptian language history. The name comes from the Greek word for Egypt, Egyptos, which became Copt. The Copts are the Christian Egyptians, and their church and language survive today.
How did Coptic script actually come about?
Well, Christianity came to Egypt in the 1st century AD with St. Mark, and interestingly, the Egyptians seemed quite receptive to the Christian Trinity, maybe partly because they already had trinities in their own pantheon like Ptah, Sekhmet, and Nefertum in Memphis, or Amun, Mut, and Khonsu in Thebes.
Oh, interesting cultural context.
Yeah, they were used to divine groups of 3 and incorporating new deities. So with Christianity taking hold, the old pagan hieroglyphs weren't really used for religious texts anymore, but people still spoke Egyptian. They needed a new script.
So they adapted.
They did something brilliant. They decided to write ancient Egyptian using the Greek alphabet. They added a few extra letters, borrowed from Demotic, for sounds that didn't exist in Greek. So Coptic is essentially ancient Egyptian written phonetically using Greek letters.
That's huge. So even though Coptic wasn't on the Rosetta Stone.
It turned out to be absolutely vital for understanding the hieroglyphs. Because Coptic represented the spoken form of ancient Egyptian in a script, scholars could read Greek. It provided the link to how the hieroglyphs actually sounded.
The missing phonetic link. Okay, so we have the stone found in 1799. What happened next in actually cracking the code?
Well, after the British defeated Napoleon in Egypt, the Rosetta Stone ended up in British hands. It's now, of course, a star attraction at the British Museum. And a little detail, people often think it's black basalt, but it's actually a pinkish-gray rock called granodiorite.
Really? Pinkish gray?
Yeah, and recent cleaning even revealed faint traces of black ink, probably from when people first made copies of the inscriptions.
Wow. And isn't it displayed quite openly?
Yes, remarkably, there's no glass case. You can actually touch it. Feel the history. It's pretty powerful.
That is amazing. Truly tangible history. Now, the decipherment itself, that was a massive intellectual puzzle, right? A couple of key players.
It was definitely a collaborative effort, though, with some famous rivalry. Key contributions came from an Englishman, Thomas Young, and a Frenchman, Jean-François Champollion. Thomas Young was just brilliant, a physician, a physicist who did amazing work on light, but also had this deep passion for languages.
A true polymath. What were his big initial insights?
Well, one crucial observation made even earlier was that the names of Egyptian kings were always enclosed in these oval frames cartouches.
Ah, yes, the ovals. Named after bullets, you said.
Yeah, Napoleon's soldiers thought they looked like bullet cartridges standing on end. So Young focused on these cartouches. He figured names couldn't be purely pictures. They had to have a phonetic element representing sounds.
Makes sense.
And since the Greek text on the Rosetta Stone clearly names King Ptolemy, Ptolemaeus Young found the matching cartouche in the hieroglyphs.
And then started matching symbols to sounds.
Exactly. He began comparing the hieroglyphs inside the Ptolemy cartouche with the Greek letters. He correctly identified some sounds, like the rectangle for P, the semicircle for T.
That was huge, wasn't it? Proving hieroglyphs could represent sounds, and that royal names in cartouches were written alphabetically.
Absolutely foundational. Young established that principle. But he still mostly believed that outside of those royal names, hieroglyphs were largely ideographic, representing ideas or objects directly.
Okay, so he cracked part of the code, but not the whole system. And this is where Champollion comes in.
Precisely. Jean-François Champollion built on Young's work, but he had the crucial missing piece: his incredible knowledge of Coptic. He'd been obsessed with languages since he was a kid, mastered Coptic, and crucially understood it was the direct descendant of ancient Egyptian.
That Coptic connection again. How did he use it?
Well, Champollion reasoned. If Coptic is spoken ancient Egyptian written in Greek letters, then the phonetic sounds of the hieroglyphs, the ones Young and others were figuring out, should match up with Coptic words.
Okay.
So he started comparing the suspected sounds of hieroglyphs with known Coptic words that had similar meanings, that let him figure out what the hieroglyphs actually meant.
Could you give an example?
Sure. Take the Ankh symbol, the cross with a loop, symbolizing life. Phonetically, it was thought to sound like Champollion knew a Coptic word that sounded very similar and meant life.
Bingo.
Exactly. That ability to connect the sound with the meaning through Coptic was the breakthrough. It let him finally fully translate the Rosetta Stone.
So Coptic was like the Rosetta Stone for the Rosetta Stone, providing the spoken key. Amazing. And it took, over 20 years? From discovery in 1799 to Champollion's decipherment in 1822.
A long, tough intellectual slog. But thanks to that, centuries of Egyptian history, culture, belief, it all suddenly opened up. An entire civilization started speaking again.
What an incredible achievement. Now, the stone itself, you said it's part of a bigger thing, a stele.
Yes, a stele. That's a large, upright stone slab, usually rounded at the top, maybe 3 to 9 feet high. They put them up in public, often in front of temples, to announce important stuff, decrees, events, honors. Actually, it's thought our modern tombstones get their shape from these stelae.
Huh. Another link to today. And this specific stele, the Rosetta one, had a purpose.
Oh, yeah. The original complete stele was put up during the reign of King Ptolemy V, one of the Greek rulers. The inscription was basically a decree from the priests thanking Ptolemy for doing them favors like tax breaks.
A public thank you note carved in stone.
Pretty much, from the priest to the king.
Yeah.
And putting it in 3 scripts, hieroglyphic, Demotic, Greek, that was very deliberate.
Right. Why those three again?
Hieroglyphs for the sacred context on temple walls, Demotic so that ordinary Egyptian people could read it, and Greek for the administration because the Greek rulers, apart from Cleopatra later on, didn't really learn Egyptian. It covered all the bases.
Smart communication. Okay, so we get the stones roll. Let's dig into how hieroglyphic writing actually worked. That wasn't just one picture, one thing, right?
No, much more complex.
Ah.
A single hieroglyph could be used in 3 different ways, depending on context. First, phonetically representing a sound, like our alphabet letters. The hand for D, the rectangle for P, the semicircle for T. But remember, they didn't usually write vowels.
Right, just the consonants. Common in ancient languages, you said.
Yeah, sort of a memory aid for literate people who knew the spoken words. Okay, second way. As a determinative.
A determinative?
Yeah, a symbol placed after the phonetic spelling of a word to clarify its meaning. Like if you wrote DPT for boat, you might add a little pictures of boat at the end. You don't pronounce the boat picture, it just confirms, yes, this DPT means boat. Helps avoid confusion.
Look at category tags. Smart. Okay, and the third way.
As an ideogram or logogram. That's when the picture does stand for the whole word or idea directly, like actual picture writing. Often, a little stroke underneath meant take this literally. They used this sometimes when space was tight, like a shorthand symbol.
So it could be sound, category clue, or direct picture, all in one system. Very versatile. And they could write it in different directions, too.
Yes, very flexible, right to left to right, or top to bottom in columns. A lot of it was about aesthetics, making inscriptions look balanced and beautiful, especially in tombs or over doorways.
Artistry mattered. So how did you know which way to read it?
You look at the animals, especially birds. You always read towards the direction their faces, their mouths are pointing. They sort of guide your eye along the line.
Follow the creatures. I like that. Okay, so we've covered the silence, the discovery, the decipherment. Now for the fun part we promised, writing our own names.
Right. Now that you get the basics that it's mostly phonetic, you can transliterate your name. That means converting the sounds of your name into the closest Egyptian sounds using their alphabet.
And we have a chart to help with that.
Exactly. We've provided a chart with common hieroglyphs and their sound values. Remember, no full vowels usually, so use the semi-vowel sounds on the chart and skip silent vowels in your name. It's about capturing the core sounds.
Okay, so find the hieroglyphs for the sounds. Let's do that Barbara example again.
Okay, Barbara. Sound by sound. B, that's the foot symbol. A sound, use the vulture for the semi-vowel. R, that's the mouth symbol. So bar is foot, vulture, mouth.
Foot, vulture, mouth.
Then ba again, foot, vulture.
Oh.
Then ro again, mouth, vulture.
Mouth, vulture. So foot, vulture, mouth, vulture. That's Barbara.
You got it. It's phonetic approximation. So we really encourage everyone listening, grab that chart, try your own name. It's a cool way to connect with this ancient script.
Definitely. And maybe a little homework. Try transliterating, say, 3 famous names using the chart. Then show your hieroglyphic versions and the chart to someone and see if they can guess who they are.
Great idea. It really makes you appreciate the system.
Well, that was quite the journey today into Egyptian writing. We looked at the scripts, the huge importance of the Rosetta Stone, how the language actually worked.
And hopefully you had some aha moments and maybe appreciate just how complex and beautiful this ancient communication system really was.
It truly is remarkable. One stone holding the key to unlock 1,000 years of silence. It's just a testament to human curiosity and intellect, isn't it?
Absolutely. So go on, give it a try, write your name. It's a small thing, but it connects you directly to that incredible achievement.
Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration into timeless Egypt. If this deep dive sparked your curiosity, please do like, follow, and subscribe to Beyond the Known for more journeys into history's mysteries. Until next time, keep exploring.